testimony perhaps that we're hearing this afternoon. So we're going to start out with Karen Horn, League of Cities and Towns. And Karen, if you want to join us at the table.
Thank you.
I think you may be not a first timer this year in our committee. I'm not sure.
Certainly it's the first time in person.
Okay, yeah, that's probably it.
So, yeah. I'm Karen Horn with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. We're an association of all the city and town governments in Vermont. It's a membership association, so membership's voluntary. And just a little bit about us, we provide training and technical assistance to local governments about any question that affects their office, a particular official's office. We provide insurance, risk pools for unemployment liability and workers' compensation. And then we follow all the legislation in the State House that affects local governments, which usually ends up being around 200 bills because we're what's called a Dillon's Rule state. And that means that municipalities can only do those things that the legislature specifically gives them permission to do. So that's us in a nutshell. I've been saying this the last couple of weeks. I've been here for 36 years. I'm going to be here for 2 more months.
Are you saying that you're not going to be back next year?
I'm retiring. Yeah.
Okay.
I am retiring. Yay.
Congratulations.
No offense, but yeah. So we have followed S-115, your miscellaneous ag bill as it came through in the Senate. We testified in the Senate Agriculture Committee a couple of times on this provision related to stormwater. We testified in the Senate Natural Resources, and we ended up supporting the version that came to your committee. And I just saw a few moments ago your amendment that Mike O'Grady is going to come in to talk about. But I had it in the back of my mind that maybe we had talked about this in here at the beginning of the session, but I guess not, because the bill started over there. So what happens at the local level is that municipalities are mandated to comply with the new stormwater rules, the total maximum daily load plan for Lake Champlain and the other waterways of the state. And they have to manage the stormwater that comes off of any piece of municipal infrastructure. So buildings, and the biggest item clearly is roads, and then parking lots and things like that. And we are required to assure that that stormwater runoff does not run off of our roads and eventually get to the lake carrying phosphorus and pollutants with them. So in those towns that have stormwater utilities, every person is currently obligated to pay into a fund that helps the town manage those municipal facilities and infrastructure for stormwater. So that includes, for instance, the Agency of Transportation makes a payment to the town of Williston and South Burlington to help those communities with stormwater management. It includes all the individuals who are now subject to what's called the 3-acre permit, where if you have more than 3 acres of impervious surface, you have to manage your stormwater runoff from your site. So it's an all-in approach, and we understand that that farms, the various agencies that use our infrastructure, private developers, and even private residents have their own expenses related to stormwater management on their properties. But this is a payment that's to the town to help manage the infrastructure, the stormwater runoff from infrastructure. And in those towns that don't have a stormwater utility or a requirement to pay into a stormwater management fund, then the town has to get that money from the property tax. That's always our fallback in local government, is the property tax. So I just wanted to be clear, because there's been some misunderstanding as we've gone through the process about what a stormwater impact fee or utility fee or management fee to a municipality means and who it affects. The one other piece that's worth noting is that if you put something like stormwater on the property tax, not everybody in town pays the property tax, right? Municipalities don't, state agencies don't, nonprofits don't, schools don't, churches don't, but they all contribute to the stormwater management issue that we have. So having said all of that, we did support the amendment that came from the Senate through the Senate Natural Resources Committee that established a study for looking at what the stormwater issue means at the local level and how it applies to farms in particular and silvicultural practices. And in the meantime, while that study is being conducted, that municipalities would not be able to charge the stormwater fee to farms or silvicultural practices. I believe that's the way it's worded. So we're hoping that stays in the bill. And as I said, I haven't really had the opportunity to read Mike O'Grady's most recent amendment very carefully, so I don't feel like I should respond to that right now. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and I might have a question for all of you, which is, have you heard from anybody about stormwater? Anybody, like any of your constituents or your municipalities, because these are huge expenses for everybody.
Well, let's see if we've got, thank you, Karen. Let's see if we've got committee questions. Representative Templeman.
Just for more clarification on what you're advocating for, maybe I repeat it back and you tell me if I got it or not. So the part of the bill that would, so, the whole question on stormwater is the key point here. And there's a section in the bill that would suggest we make like a 1-year moratorium. And that's what you're hoping we hold on to.
Yes.
Okay.
While you conduct the study.
The study, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Representative O'Brien.
How does it work with when municipalities have a stormwater utility? Is there some sort of payment in lieu of taxes for municipal owned properties with impervious surfaces?
As I understand it, everybody pays in. So the municipality, in some municipalities, they actually have a line item that goes to that fund as well. I'm not sure that that's the case in every municipality. So, but the idea is that it's all in, that we all have the obligation to support the stormwater management off of municipal property.
So like a town garage and parking lot around, like that doesn't pay in?
In some communities, I think in South Burlington, that there is a credit, because so you're sort of taking it out of this pocket and putting it in this pocket in the municipal budget, but I believe it is accounted for in the budget in places like South Burlington. I'm not sure about Williston or Burlington, for instance. I could get back to you about that.
And supervisory unions too, since they're not.
Oh, the schools, yeah, the schools pay, agencies pay, anybody that has property in a municipality pays in. That's the whole idea.
Representative Graham.
So where do the municipalities get the authority to do this stormwater? Is that under the Agency of Natural Resources?
It's actually more of a mandate than authority, but to manage your stormwater, which is out of the Agency of Natural Resources. There's authority in the statutes right now for municipalities to establish stormwater utilities and or to assess a fee for municipal stormwater management. And the question that arose down in the Senate was whether farms were subject to that. It was our understanding all along that everyone would be subject to that kind of a payment. So there's two sections in the statute that are actually pretty extensive in Title 10 and in Title 24 that address stormwater management.
So it's my understanding that ANR does not have the authority to regulate stormwater on farms.
Right.
The town does, and the town's
No, so
creating it over and above the authority that ANR has.
So we're not regulating stormwater on the farm or on any piece of private property. What we are obligated to do is manage stormwater runoff that reaches the roadways and the ditches and the public parking lots and mitigate the inflow, the stormwater flow to the waters of the state. So we're not, this doesn't allow us to regulate how the farms manage their stormwater on their property. This is addressing managing the stormwater on municipal property, which everybody uses, our roadways and so forth. And I think that's a key distinction, Representative. It's sort of the crux of the misunderstanding that's been discussed this session.
Representative Rice, did you have a hand up earlier? Okay, Representative Lipsky.
Yes, first of all, Karen, I apologize for being late, but I did get here in time to hear you differentiate between forest, farm runoff and silvicultural practices runoff. So silvicultural practices are the management of forested land, but forest products industry would be sawmills or.
Right.
So my question has to do with what's silvicultural, and they're very strict AMPs and could mitigate any,
Right.
silted runoff.
So
How would you measure the impacts from forest management?
So it's the same issue that we're not talking about how forestry practices or the forest industry addresses stormwater on the property that they own or they're working. It's about the runoff that's in the roads that we have to manage. For instance, if you're in a rural town, you've seen local governments or you've seen your road crews stone lining ditches. That's a new stormwater management practice that towns are required to do, stone line their ditches. And incidentally, every few years, go back and clean them out and put the stones back in. But that's a different issue. So and all of that costs money. And because it's a road network that everybody uses in the community, that's where the idea of the payments come from for those kinds of improvements.
Thank you.
Representative O'Brien and then Representative Graham.
So Karen, going forward, would VLCT potentially support, since farms having this sort of manage this great filter for stormwater, that the pervious surfaces of fields actually do wonders and help towns right out with where stormwater goes. So in the sort of payment for ecosystem services, would VLCT potentially support giving parks
That's-
some sort of break?
That's an interesting idea. I think that it really depends on the nature of the property I mean, if you've got fields, that's probably infiltrating, excuse me. If you've got parking areas or, what am I thinking of? Those big concrete bunkers with manure in them.
Bunks,
Thank you.
what did you call it?
Bunks on those, yeah.
Bunks.
Yeah, those kinds of things. So it would really depend. Might be something to investigate as part of the study that's in the bill.
Representative Grant.
So I do believe most towns pay a highway department through property taxes. Part of their duties is to clean and maintain ditches. So isn't this stormwater fee a double taxation? We're already
Yeah,
paying the highway
I don't,
to do this.
we don't think so. The stormwater obligations were imposed by the legislature, probably 7 or 8 years ago. And the management of roads for stormwaters includes a whole range of new mitigation measures that were never in place before. And so for instance, you have to get every town now has to get a municipal roads general permit. They have to pay an annual fee to the Agency of Natural Resources for that. And then once every 5 years, they have to pay a re-upping fee essentially for that permit. And they have to assess all the vulnerable areas on their entire network of roads. And then they have to put in place a plan for managing any stormwater runoff from any of those vulnerable areas on their roads. So it's in addition to your regular grading, gravel, plowing, all that kind of thing, to manage the stormwater runoff. And it does, so there is also some money in grants for projects related to the municipal roads general permit, but it's never enough and it never covers the entire cost of a project. You may have heard this with respect to other funding streams in Vermont, but yeah, so it's a new obligation on municipalities.
And there's been many new regulations put on fire to control.
Oh, I know. Yeah, absolutely. We don't disagree with that one bit.
So, our legislative council has testified on this question and feels, I guess, fairly strongly that the municipalities don't have authority under existing law to be assessing the fee on farms. And the administration of the Agency of Agriculture, anyway, has likewise testified and has suggested that one way to maybe move forward would be to get from the municipalities legal citation of some sort that we can look at and say, okay, here's what the counter argument is legally. And my understanding, and not having listened to the testimony in the Senate committees all, is that they didn't feel that anybody had offered a legal justification for it. So I'm just going to maybe close by asking Karen if you want to go back to your people or the municipalities themselves and see if anybody would like to, share that with us. I think we would welcome that.
We can do that. We do have legal opinions from attorneys at the local level, establishing a actually very contrary opinion to your legislative council. And they done a lot of work to make sure that what they're doing is allowed pursuant to the statute. And a few years ago, we actually had a pretty substantive conversation with the Agency of Transportation because they didn't want to pay any stormwater fees. They said they were managing the state roads. They shouldn't have to contribute. But they do now contribute a payment to municipalities for stormwater management. It was a negotiated payment, which is also something you might want to keep in mind. But I will try and get that for you.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah. Representative O'Brien.
Just so I'm clear, how do these towns who are in the sort of TMDL stormwater district, because it's in coverage, we're not assessing,
No, but you do have a municipal road general permit.
we do,
Yes, every town in the state has.
right? But no stormwater utility, for example.
No.
So if I was a farm, am I being assessed by acreage, by the property tax I pay, by impervious surfaces on my production area?
If you're in Tundridge and there's no stormwater utility, the funding to manage the stormwater in municipal properties is coming out of the property
Right,
tax.
but if I'm in South Burlington, how does it work?
But yeah, and one of the ideas was, as I said earlier, that everyone contributes, but everyone does not contribute to the property tax. The nonprofit schools, churches, hospitals, all those people, all those entities don't pay property tax.
So how are these farms being assessed? I guess does it vary in the municipality?
In a town without a stormwater utility or requirement for a stormwater fee, it's just the property tax.
Right.
And in the towns that do have that kind of a system, there's generally a minimum fee that's paid, and then it goes up based on different criteria in different towns, which I could also get for you, what those criteria look like.
That would be helpful, because I don't get
So
if it's property tax based, acreage based, impervious surface based for these farms.
Yeah. I'll find that for you.
Great. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So our next witness is not here in person, but I think is on Zoom. Andy Jones. Andy, can you hear us?
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So we're here in the Agriculture, Food Resiliency and Forestry Committee room. Maybe in Burlington at the Intervale?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, well, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do, and then we'd be happy to hear anything you'd like to say about S115.
Thank you, Representative. My name is Andy Jones. I'm farm manager at Intervale Community Farm in Burlington. We're a vegetable farm that started in 1990, the largest of the 6 independently owned and operated farms in the Intervale in Burlington. We do a little over 20 acres of vegetables that we sell all directly to consumers. We first, thanks for the opportunity to talk about the stormwater fees. We first started having stormwater impact fees shortly after the city of Burlington started them. I didn't look back any farther than 2015, but I think we started then to the tune of about $1,200 a year. Burlington system is based on impervious service units, and so we have roughly an acre between greenhouses and buildings and driveways and things like that that fall under the Burlington ISU scheme. Ours is a little complicated because it's actually the fees imposed on our landlord who passes it along to us. We don't own the land, though we own the improvements. But nonetheless, I had a conversation with the water division in Burlington back when the fee structure was first, the stormwater fees were first coming out. And they were of the opinion that it didn't matter if we were nowhere near the stormwater system, which truncates at least a half a mile away from us and all the other farm complex buildings. We're on a very flat site, 0 to 1 degree slope. It's all river bottom sand, so the drainage is very good. So anything coming off of our buildings or greenhouses is infiltrating rather quickly. It's all in a floodplain. And so even though we were nowhere near the actual stormwater system, the city felt like it still had the authority to charge the fee to us and to the other farms in the neighborhood. We were able to get them to reduce the fee by 50%, which they said was the most they could reduce it. So we've been paying our bill from last year was a little under 1,500 at 1,476. But the overall bill, I think, for the landlord for all the different farms together was something north of 11,000 last year. So it's real money, I think. For me, since the farms are already and stormwater and our water quality activities are already regulated, whether or not we're certified through the state LFO, MFO, or small farm certification program, we're still subject to the same laws and regulations governing whether there's water or nutrients leaving the property. So we're already managing those things, and it would be great not to have to pay for those, since we're not really impacting the actual stormwater in the city of Burlington in any material sense.
Thank you. Let's see if there's any questions from committee members. Representative O'Brien.
So Andy, you're following RAPs. So somebody from the Agency of Ag has come out and looked at your production area or those impervious surfaces and that's okayed where stormwater runs off from those places?
We are following the RAPs, but because we are not large enough, we actually haven't had to maintain. We aren't subject to the inspection regime. There's a scale. There's an animal units threshold, or in the case of vegetables, I think the threshold is something like 40 acres of production. And if you're below that, you're not subject to the annual inspection and reporting, although we still have to abide by the same rules, but we haven't had ongoing inspections or anything like that. Any development, because we're in a floodplain and because we're in a city with zoning and planning, any development that we do here for our greenhouses or wash pack or any other kinds of utility barns, that does go to the agency to be designated as an agricultural project before it goes back to the city and they consider it exempt. So we already are having some lens at the agency that this is an appropriate project for that is indeed agricultural, and B, it's appropriate and legitimate within a floodplain. So there's already some level of scrutiny even without the RAP inspections happening.
Andy, are there other tenants or businesses operating in the Intervale and the floodplain there that are not agriculture?
Not within the floodplain proper. The Intervale Center, the nonprofit organization that is our landlord, they have some of their own projects, some of which are agricultural and some of which are not. So they may have small numbers of their activity that are within the floodplain, may not be agricultural, but the bulk of their activity actually in the area with the farm complex that we're paying the stormwater fees on, the bulk of that is agricultural. They have a nursery where they're running, they're growing nursery perennials and things like that. So I don't know at the farmstead. I think they do have ISU things for their offices and stuff like that that probably don't fall under the agricultural rules, but the city is still imposing the stormwater fees on the two tax parcels that are clearly just ag land.
And I'm not sure that's relevant necessarily, but when you say floodplain, when we talk about the floodplain there, is it a 100-year floodplain? Do you get flooded regularly?
Sections, generally near the buildings, there's no regular flooding. The only thing that came close was Irene, when, we had like a little 1 acre window in the middle of the whole 300-acre valley. But generally speaking, the flooding is on the marginal lands, the lower spots in the fields.
So there's a policy issue here, but there's also a legal question. You said, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Did you say that you spoke to the city and they said, no, they do have the legal authority to assess the fee on you?
That was their opinion at the time when I last talked to them, and then which was at the inception of the fee. I didn't take it up with them since then. I did have a conversation with Ryan Patch from the Agency of Ag.
He's with us in the room, I should say, at the moment.
Over there, who called, and we spoke about this maybe 6 or 8 weeks ago, and he called Burlington after our conversation, and that was their opinion also at that time, that they had the authority to levy the stormwater fee based on the existing regulatory framework.
We have one representative who's also on Zoom, Representative Levitt. I just want to check with you before we let Mr. Jones go.
I guess I'm a little confused because what the previous witness said and what Andy is saying is a little counter to what we've heard from Ledge Council, which is municipalities don't have the authority to do this. And now it sounds like they absolutely do, and they have been. And so I'm just taking it all in, and I'm back to being a tiny bit confused, but I don't need to take up committee time on that. But it doesn't, based on what we learned last week, it doesn't seem like towns should be assessing stormwater fees to farms if they have no impact on the city or the village or the town's stormwater system.
So I think what we're hearing are two different, possibly two different legal opinions, although we're only hearing secondhand the counter opinion, I guess. And so what we've asked for is firsthand counter opinion from the previous witness from the League of Cities and Towns. So we'll try and clear that up. I mean, I don't think we'll get all lawyers necessarily to agree on anything ever, but we'll at least try and get something firsthand. Representative Lipke.
Andy, I love your common sense logic, and it's really discouraging, but I haven't heard if your landlord who owns the collective parcel has gone to the city of Burlington to ask for who's paying the 11 grand total. Have they gotten a ruling on that?
They have
the landlord.
asked, our landlord, the Intervale Center, they have asked the city stormwater program. They were denied when they last asked. I think it was a couple of years ago. They were in conversations last year, I know, with an engineering firm, because they were hoping that they could actually have an engineering analysis done, showing that there was no stormwater leaving the site based on the hydrology and the soil type and all of that kind of stuff, and then take that to the city with the hopes that they could then use that to convince the city to either drop or at least reduce the fees, because the other parcels, I believe it's only the parcel that we are on that had the 50% reduction from Burlington, and I believe the other parcels are still at the full rate. So they were going to try to see if they could have this engineering analysis done and take that to the city get a better, to have to, to be allowed to pay less fees. But it was, the engineering analysis was going to cost them 10 grand. So they had to come up with the money to do that, and hope for the outcome. So.
Representative O'Brien.
Andy, is the Intervale Center not-for-profit?
They are.
So do you know of other not-for-profits in Burlington, like the colleges? Are they assessed also, do you know?
That's a great question. I do not know the answer to that. I can say that at least they are tied into the stormwater system. They have streets and things, the roofs that flow into streets that then go into the stormwater system. I think one of the things in our case is that there's, there are no storm zeros anywhere nearby.
How many acres in all in the Intervale?
I think the total is around 300. Most of that is agricultural land, although a fair amount of it is sort of riparian forest and wetlands and things as well.
So do you collectively pay a property tax to Burlington?
I believe that is the case. Yeah, again, it's through our lease. So we're not paying the property tax directly. And I don't know if I think they have, because of that. Yeah, I believe it's all conserved through VLT. I'm not sure about the other tax basis, or whether they're doing a pilot kind of assessment or something like the universities that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Thank you.
Not seeing any other questions. So Andy, I want to thank you again for taking time. I'm sure you're busy right now, this time of year, and I'll let you get back to work.
Thanks very much. Thank you all for your time and considering, and I hope you're able to move this forward.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Now we're going to hear from,
Good question before.
yes.
In order to get a legal opinion, I'd like to see a legal opinion from A&R. Because the league is not sanctioned by the state of Vermont. Organization that makes laws on lawyers to figure out what it means for them.
Yeah. Our conversation last week with A&R led me to believe that they were not prepared to offer an opinion or concurred with the opinion of the Agency of Agriculture. And we can get maybe them to clarify that. Our legislative council has said, please encourage the municipalities to cite statute where they think they have this authority. So that's why I asked that.
Did A&R give municipalities the authority to create utilities? Or was that like the PUC or something like that?
That may be beyond my, not sure. Yeah.
It seems to be coming from there, like everybody has to pay in to the utility,
Yeah.
no matter what.
I'm guessing it was that we did, the legislature, but I'm not sure. Let's have Amber Perry join us now from Farm Bureau. Still on this topic of S115.
Yes, Amber Perry, Vermont Farm Bureau. Thanks for having me in today. We agree with what the Agency of Ag, Food and Markets on this. We were happy with the language of S115 Section 8 when it came out of Senate Ag. Vermont Farm Bureau supports the role of Vermont Agency of Ag in maintaining all oversight and enforcement of regulations regarding permitting, environmental regulations, and inspections of farms, and to allow for the current regulation to realize the potential. Agriculture is already doing their job with the stormwater concerns by working with the agency through the adherence of the required agricultural practices. These 83 farms that are already paying for water requirements in their large, medium, and certified small farm permits, and for them to be charged another fee from the municipalities just seems like a double taxation. And I think, that's all we really have Any questions?
So, and just to clarify, the version that came out of Senate Ag, some of us have a piece of, right, we've got several pages of stapled together, and it was language that basically clarified and said, no, you can't.
And the farms were not liable, the towns didn't have to pay the farmers for that back fee,
Right, for any previous.
just going forward.
Okay. So that version, the
Yes.
Farm Bureau was supporting, okay. Questions for the Farm Bureau? All right. That was, yes, Representative.
Just a comment, Amber, nice to see you again. Our funnest day of this session was riding around with you to the farm. So,
Thank you for coming with us.
great. Thank you.
I think we all concur.
Yeah.
Good. So we're going to have Michael Grady come in. I don't know if he's on his way. Okay. If while we're waiting for Mike, if you on your iPad want to pull up the amendment that. So last week we had A&R DEC was in, and they worked. We sort of wrapped up that session by asking the Agency of Agriculture and DEC to work together on some language that would set aside both A&R and Ag, and to, once they had come up with something, send it off to Legislative Council. So that happened, and Michael Grady put together the language that's in this amendment that's on our page today.
Is that 1.1-S?
You know, you're ahead of me.
115.
But
I've never been ahead of you ever getting some on my screen.
the red letter day.
It is draft 1.1 of the amendment.
Yeah, okay. So I'll just say, having looked at it quickly, that it's not a strike all amendment. So it just replaces sections 8 and 9 in the bill that came out of the Senate with new sections 8 and 9. And you all maybe have a copy of it sitting around, but the original bill has 10 sections, and section 10 is the enactment date. But everything prior to that, 1 through 7, would be the same. And that's all dealing with different things, eggs and other matters that we've gone through, and I don't think there's any real question on. So. Okay.
So I'm just looking, this doesn't have any language around the moratorium of a year with the study.
So, right, exactly.
So are we considering dropping that?
So this amendment considers dropping that, yeah. So we can have a conversation about that.
Okay.
It leaves I should really let Mike walk through it, but you'll see section 9 looks familiar. Yes, Representative O'Brien.
I just wonder if we could have a quick committee discussion.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. Good time for that.
As I understand it, municipalities say, okay, I think it's whoever A&R gave us power to become a utility. And what we're charging in a given town is a fee because everybody uses municipal roads and that sort of infrastructure. What confuses me is that the way they're assessing that fee is oftentimes, it seems, on impervious surfaces, which in the case of farms, unlike almost anybody else, is self-contained and essentially is not adding to the stormwater burden of a given municipality. So it's sort of counterintuitive. Like if everybody has to pay something, right? It seems like there would be a better way to assess that fee with farms doing so much already and doing actually more than any, legal bodies like
Right.
schools or hospitals or colleges, et cetera, parking lots.
Yeah, and I think that, so you've just articulated an argument, a policy argument for not assessing the fee. And we may have heard, not just today, but at other times, possibly policy arguments for assessing the fee. And we can figure out, which of those do we agree with more, or is there some middle ground? In addition to that, there's the legal argument that we've really only heard direct testimony from on one side saying there's no legal justification for doing this. And so the agency, when they brought us the language originally, wanted to clarify that there was no legal justification and not let it continue to boil along and possibly have somebody say the only way to resolve this is through the courts. We're going to try and avoid that. Representative Lipsky.
Yeah, this is general discussion. I mean, I assume most of us have been to the Intervale. It's a unique public service with zero impact on municipal load and all sorts of public good beyond the description. It almost feels like a shakedown by municipal government for no burden to them whatsoever. $11,000 is a pretty big fee.
I believe they're trying to get more money faster by assessing our property. One thing, I do want to, my opinion is that leagues and cities and town does not have authority to authorize a municipality to charge fees. That organization is just supposed to be an advisory organization for towns on what they think the law means. And if A&R and Department of Ag both agree that they should be assessing fees, then I don't think that the cities and towns should be advising towns to do that.
Charge them.
That's my personal opinion. You might gather that I have not have much use for.
I just wondered, like, if the Intervale's paying $11,000 a year for relatively small amounts of impervious surface, like UVM, I would think would be paying, six figures. Unless it's just this Wild West where they get to negotiate.
It's all connected to a storm drain system, which goes through their municipal infrastructure.
But it sounds like it's all.
The stormwater system is piped to the lake.
Right, well, then they're paying for the conduit that straight pipes turbidity and mud into the lake. But Intervale's contributing zero to that.
But I don't think it's assessed, just being devil's advocate, on how much you're adding to the burden. It's just assessed like everybody has to pay for the roads and the water that runs off those roads. So the Intervale is paying their share for the streets of Burlington. Doesn't matter how good they are or bad they are. But if that's the case, I would think UVM's paying $500,000 a year for that same burden, which I'm sure they're not because they probably made a deal.
Generally, schools are exempt.
But why wouldn't this farm, which is a not-for-profit, be exempt too?
Yeah, it sounded like they weren't exempting the nonprofits or the municipal schools.
Or Burlington High School.
Yeah.
They've got a settling bond there off the church.
Yeah.
They got a settling
If we are
bond off the
charging
church
farms,
street.
do we
They
know
call them the ground.
what that amount would be county by county that the municipalities would be losing out on? And would they have to raise property taxes to account for that missing funding source? Would other residents feel that?
But, no, I think that I don't think that, well, no, we may have taken testimony that, yes, that cost would be spread out among the other, whoever else is being assessed the fee.
Heather brings up a good question though, which is, I live in Grand Isle County. I don't think I haven't been assessed a fee for this. I certainly haven't seen it accounted for in my property taxes. And I don't know. It does feel like double dipping, and I agree with everything Rodney just said. I feel like if they're paying a fee to A&R and a farm is a self-contained stormwater system and it's dealing with its own stormwater, they shouldn't be charged again. That just doesn't, it just doesn't seem fair to me. But she did say something about Title 10 and Title 11 in state statute. So the woman from VLCT. So I don't know. Has anyone looked that up? Do we know anything about that?
Well, I don't think it's incumbent on us to dig into the titles and find the exact piece of statute. So, Karen Horn, who was testifying earlier for VLCT, said that she would come back to us with more specifics there.
Have we gotten anyone from a municipality to talk to us? Like,
so that will be next.
Okay.
Not today, but yeah, I think that's probably where we're heading.
I just had a question for Josie.
Yeah.
Josie, I suspect that all those little island towns are too small, or they haven't created a utility the way the bigger
Oh,
towns.
good point. That's an
around.
excellent point. Yeah, we don't have those. That's a good point, John.
So I think what we'll do is stop for the moment, give everyone a chance to stretch, because we're going to be back, we're supposed to be back into the next topic at 2:00, and not sure where we are with Mike, but we'll catch up with him later. So let's just take a quick pause. And if you see Ellen Tchaikovsky coming this way, she's our next witness. So